From the Oregon State University Extension Service, this is Pollination, a podcast that tells the stories of researchers, land managers, and people like you who are making bold strides to improve the health of pollinators. I'm your host, Dr. Adoni Malathopoulos, Associate Professor of Pollinator Health in the Department of Horticulture. As someone who almost exclusively studies bees, I never thought I'd become interested in the social wasps. I mean, they're really cool, and we have an episode way back with Megan Ash where she talks about the genus Polistes, the paper wasps. They're really fascinating, but there's so much to know about bees that I just envisioned I would just be working on bees. That all changed when I got my job in Extension back here in 2016. There are hundreds of questions that come from the public about yellow jackets that I have to answer each year. And that all really changed when Northern Giant Hornet was found up on the border between British Columbia and Washington State. And then the questions really ramped up. Now, as many of you know, there has not been a detection of the Northern Giant Hornet in Washington for some years, and owing to the very good work of eradication done by Washington State Department of Agriculture. But nevertheless, the problem still continues. In eastern United States, there's been a new Asian hornet that's been introduced, a different one, Vespa velutina, the Yellow-Legged Hornet. Of course, in eastern U.S., they've had the European hornet for some years, since the 1840s, Vespa crabo. Now, this new hornet in the eastern United States, the Yellow-Legged Hornet, is going to be a cause for concern, and in this episode, we're going to learn more about it from the front lines in the United Kingdom. In this episode, I'm joined by Maggie Gill. She's a senior scientist with the Department for Environment, Food, and Rural Affairs in the United Kingdom. I met Maggie at the BTEC conference in Calgary, Alberta, a wonderful conference put on by the Canadian Honey Council, where she talked about the amazing initiative they have at DIFRA to track and eradicate this huge invasion of these hornets in the United Kingdom. It's a really fascinating episode to hear about those techniques, hear about the biology, and really to help us prepare for what's going to be inevitable, the introduction of hornets from other parts of the world to North America. So without further ado, let's head to Calgary, Alberta this week on Pollination with Maggie Gill.
Hi there.
We are here in Calgary, Alberta. We're here at the BTEC conference, Canadian Honey Council, and many of our listeners are aware. In the Pacific Northwest, we've had Northern Giant Hornet findings, but many may not be aware that in Europe they've been also dealing with hornet invasions. Tell us a little bit about
Vespa velutina.
Thank you.
Yeah, so we have Vespa velutina, so we call them the Asian hornets. I think you guys call them the Yellow-Legged Hornets. So in France in 2004, it's thought that a single Asian hornet queen, so she was hibernating in some ceramic pots. She came into southwest France.
How do they know that?
I don't know. Whenever I've read it, I've always gone, like, really?
Ceramic pots?
Ceramic pots from China. Right. So, yeah.
It came in on ceramic
pots, hibernating. She emerged in the spring, and from that one queen, Asian hornet has established and then spread throughout France and large parts of Europe. So in terms of the UK, we had our first Asian hornet at Tetbury in Gloucestershire. So that's sort of the sort of southwest-ish of the UK.
Okay.
In 2016. So I worked for the National Bee Unit, and we had the one report came in, inspectors went out, and we do a system called track and trace, where we track the hornets and find the nests. And then every year, so from 2016 to 2022, we've had 13 nests at 11 different locations. But then unfortunately last year, so 2023, we had 72 nests. So we've seen a big spike in the number of Asian hornet nests.
And I I remember, like, you would think a single population founded by a single female, that it would peter out, that there would be so much inbreeding that it would not go anywhere. But that wasn't the case. It seemed to spread throughout.
So when it was sort of initially like significant reports were coming in from France, and obviously the UK is very close to France, and there were many discussions about it, and the narrative that we had was, well, it's one queen genetically, her daughters will be mating with their brothers, and genetically it's a very small gene pool, so that will just sort of peter out, and quite quickly you won't have a viable population of Asian hornets. But that's not been the case. I'm not sort of entirely sure how that's happened. Probably some sort of like random genetic mutation is like keeping it alive. But I think Asian hornets have kind of surprised us every step of the way. So we've got them in areas of the UK where we didn't think they'd be able to sort of become established. So up in the north of the country now, with quite large nests. So
How certain are we that they've come across the channel on their own steam? Is it movement by people? Do we have any sense of it?
So there's a lot of speculation about how they come over. The ferry staff that work on the ferries that go from France to Britain, they're very well trained, and we'll get reports of like, hey, we there was an Asian hornet in the bar and we killed it. They will hitch a lift on ferries. We've had them in cars, so cars that have been imported, like brand new cars, and just sort of like hibernating in car parts. And then we've had quite a few where people have come back off holiday, and perhaps they've been camping or they've got caravans or something like that. We generally try to trace it back to something. We've had a couple of cauliflower hornets, so overwintering queens that have hibernated in cauliflowers in France.
They're called the cauliflower hornets.
And then people like literally people will be making their Sunday roast and cutting up these cauliflowers, and a hornet will pop out. So we've had a couple of those. So they're known as the cauliflower hornets. So.
Multiple routes of entry, and I was very impressed hearing about the UK's response, because it seems as though I'm sure this is a British phrase, but a whack-a-mole problem. Where it seems to, but they're coming up with a coordinated national response, and led by the inspectors who are charged with the beekeeping industry.
So National Bee Unit plays a big part, but we also have Centre for Ecology and Hydrology and the Non-Native Species Secretariat. So it's really a sort of like a multi-department response to it. And in terms of public engagement is the most important thing. It's members of the public that spot these hornets, and we have the Asian Hornet Watch app. So it's a free app that members of the public can download, and you can report Asian hornet sightings through there. There's lots of species information in there. We also have various websites. The Welsh Beekeepers Association, the British Beekeepers Association, they've put a lot of input into raising awareness on how to trap them, how to identify them, because we rely on members of the public to do that. So and then once we get the reports in, I think last year we had 20,000 or so reports, and of those...
Wow, did you say 20,000?
20,000.
20,000 people.
I think it was 20,173 if memory serves.
Oh my goodness.
And and they're all triaged, so that can be a photograph that comes in to just a description of, I think I've got Asian hornets in my loft. They're all triaged by staff, and so from those 20,000 reports, I think 151 were actual Asian hornets that we then responded to. And every kind of credible report that we get, we do find a nest and go and destroy it and remove it. So
it's really, I think the app is great, and the initiative is the rollout, because I guess being on this end on the west coast of the U.S. and getting northern giant hornet reports, oftentimes they're not very descriptive, and I think the app allows you to get a picture. Like, I think for most people, just having some, and maybe it's the members of the public, it's not clear what they need to do, but I guess when you're on the receiving end of 20,300 or whatever, being able to have, I saw something with, tell us what a good description would be like?
Some are very descriptive, and an Asian hornet is quite identifiable. So they have yellow legs, they have a yellow face, their body is very dark, and they'll have this one yellow band on their abdomen. So they are a very distinctive hornet, and some people are very good at describing that. But we will have reports of, I've got 3 hornets in a trap, and when that's triaged, a member of staff will try to either email or phone back the person who's made the report. And so, for example, that 3 hornets in a trap report was actually Asian hornets. So that person that reported them, they were contacted and asked to sort of go and see if there were still hornets there. And it is a laborious process of checking those reports. But even the worst description of an Asian hornet can be an Asian hornet. So it is important to do that follow-up because that was a nest that we then went and tracked and traced and found and removed. So
that was the thing I was really impressed with, is when a hornet was identified, just the kind of very regimented system of action. So can you describe to us, so you find out that it is credible, what happens next?
Yeah, so the report comes in, somebody will confirm it, and we have, we call it the track and trace app. So, and we have work iPhones, so it's an app that we have on our iPhones.
A track and trace app.
Track and trace app. So it's
that?
So it's ArcGIS, which is like a computer, like a landscape modeling software.
Yeah.
It's really good because it's a real-time app. As we add data in, all of the other inspectors can kind of see, what we've put in. So when the report comes into the office, that will go on, and you can see it on the map. Generally, we'll send between sort of 2 and 6 bee inspectors out to triage that and to start the track and trace. We'll set up traps and bait stations. Generally, the hornets will come quite quickly and start feeding at the bait stations. You need good weather. I mean, if it's raining and really windy, then
which it never happens in the UK.
No, it's always beautiful. But generally, you'll get hornets feeding quite quickly, and they'll feed on the bait stations. We will mark them different colours, so we'll put different.
So it's a bait station where they come and they're feeding, and so then you can mark them.
Yeah, so we'll put little, so queen marker pen. We'll put a little dot of different colours on them, and then we'll start. So, and they're very good. So once they've had a good feed, we feed a.
Wait, let me get this straight. You're handling these giant hornets and putting paint. That sounds like kind of like.
They're pretty tolerant. Like they.
Oh, okay.
If you're close to the nest, they will be defensive. That's
but out
their nest.
In the wild,
but
at the bait
out,
station.
like when they're foraging and they're just out and about. I mean, obviously don't squash them because they'll sting you. But they're pretty tolerant.
Okay.
They'll let you because we use like takeaway trays, and we'll have maybe a centimetre of trap it, so that's like the commercially available bait in the bottom. We'll put stones and things in so that they can walk down to the bait and feed on it. They don't like to get themselves sticky. They can be a bit fussy, and they'll spend ages. Like you'll finally get hornets feeding, and then one will fall in the bait, and they will get all sticky, and it will spend half an hour cleaning itself. And it's like, oh, just come on, just want to see which way you fly.
Okay, so you put the mark on them, and then you watch where they go.
Yeah, so it's literally, and they're very good. So once they've fed and they're full of food, they will fly straight back to the nest. So you get a very clear, we call it a bee line, but it's a hornet line back to the nest. It's a bit of a sort of general rule of thumb, but for every minute of, so they'll feed, they'll go to the nest, they'll unload that feed, and then they'll come straight back.
Oh, so you know.
Yeah. So
like the time.
Yeah. So for every minute of return flight, the nest is approximately 100 meters away.
So you've got this app, and what do? You just like point it in the direction of where it goes? You
literally sort of point the phone in the direction they flew, and
then
you,
it gets
you
a vector
time
on them.
And it's like it was 2 minutes, so it's 200 meters away, and you put that information into the app, and it will draw a line, in the direction that they went. And once you've got 2 or 3 good lines, other inspectors will be at the other end of those lines because you have a rough idea where they are, and they'll do the same sort of coming back. And it's triangulation, and we can find a nest sort of like 24, 48 hours. We've got really good at
finding that. So you trace that line back, and it's like you look around, it's like, oh, there it is.
Yeah,
maybe it's high up in a tree or something.
Oh yeah, just do that, and then it's just standing there, and so they have primary nests low down, and that can be an undergrowth, or they'll be sort of at the top of tall trees. So it is literally just stand around and you'll spot them and go, oh, right, there they are. They're flying into that tree. And
you find it. Let's say you find it. Sorry. In the UK, do you use feet or meters?
Meters. Well, a bit of both. Yeah.
Okay, it's kind of like Canada.
Yeah.
Okay. So you find it 10 feet up in the air. What do you do then?
So they'll either be really low down or really high up. They don't tend to have that kind of middle ground. So we wait until it's getting dark. So that's when most of the hornets will return to the nest for the night. We inject it with an insecticide to kill the nest, and then generally the following morning the nest.
How do you do that? That sounds.
So we have air lances, which sound a lot.
Air lances.
Air lances, yeah.
Really?
So it's like
it sounds so medieval.
It's like a can of compressed air, and you have like a bicycle pump, and you pump it up to a certain pressure, and then so the insecticide is a powder, and you fill a little container on that.
Oh, so you like poke the nest?
Yeah. So and if they're 25 meters up a tree, we have extendable poles, and you wobble around with this sort of extendable pole, and you've got somebody else going left a bit, no, left a bit more, right a bit, get it, stab it. So and then the pressure from the air that you pumped up will inject the pesticide into the nest. So
one thing I was fascinated in your talk is that all of this material comes back to the lab. So you bring all the nests and tell us why you do that.
So every nest is dissected. So we want to find out the sexual maturity of the nest. So have they produced drones? Have they produced new queens? We also do DNA testing to test relatedness. So are two nests that are close to each other, are they sister nests? Are they related to nests that we perhaps had in previous years?
Oh, because I guess I can tell you if it's like
an established population or if it's sort of something that's come in newly from France. So
on those cars.
On the cars and the ferries, yeah.
Okay, but the alternative is it's established and it's like starting to spread inside.
Yeah. So and so like I said, we had 72 nests last year. We also collect any lone hornets we come across. So they're collected and the lab will. So they'll dry them out. They'll weigh them. They'll check if they're a drone or if they're a queen. They'll do DNA analysis. So that's still ongoing.
Okay.
But yeah, I think so. Really, the question we need to answer is this an established population that is now sort of established in the southeast of England, or are these new hornets that are coming over? We're still waiting for some of the results from that to kind of be definitive in answering that one.
Amazing program. I guess the question that this hornet has been found in the U.S., right?
Yeah, Georgia in 2023. So I believe that was the first time.
Okay, so this is something that we us in the U.S. will be. I guess we're in Canada right now, but in the U.S. will be facing. Why is this a beekeeping problem?
So
we should probably lead with that.
Yeah, so when the hornets sort of first arrived in France, it was French beekeepers that noticed them and noticed there was a problem and started reporting that there were issues. So the hornets will hawk outside the front of hives and they pick off the foragers.
Hawk?
So they'll fly and they'll face outwards, and they've got a very distinctive yellow face, and you'll see them sort of hawking outside the front of hives, and as the foraging bees return to the hives, they'll pick them off because they're full of nectar. So not only do they get the protein of their bodies, but they've got the nectar in them, and you'll see that the foraging bees in the hive, they're very reluctant to go out and actually forage, so they'll all cluster on the entrance block, and you'll have sort of a beard of bees that won't go out and forage. The colony slowly starves because you've got no food coming in. Yeah, and then the hornets will go in and eat the brood and eat the bees and eat the honey stores. So it depends on the region of France, but they've reported losses of between 30 and 80% of colonies.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, so pretty significant. But so it's not only that though. So a honeybee is quite a hard thing for a hornet to catch. Like it flies and it can sting. They will predate on any insect, so whether it's aphids or caterpillars or beetles, they need so much protein to kind of feed and support their nest that it's that detrimental effect that it has on the whole ecosystem, because they're eating insects that birds birds and other small mammals rely on. So while it's the National Bee Unit that predominantly deals with the sort of tracking and tracing of the nests, it's a whole wider issue in terms of like the ecology of the area and that. So,
well, I'm really heartened to hear about the programs that you've developed in the UK. I think we have a lot to learn from them, and thanks so much for. I'm so glad you were able to come to Canada for this meeting.
It's been great. I've really enjoyed it. Yeah.
And it's been great to learn from you. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you. Thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for listening. Show notes with links from each episode are available at the website pollinationpodcast.oregonstate.edu. I also love hearing from you, and there's a form at the website where you can pop in and say hello and give me feedback. If you want to support the show, remember to leave a rating on iTunes, Spotify, or whatever podcast mothership you use. And finally, if you have the means and you want to help support my lab's effort to document bee biodiversity in Oregon, visit OregonBeeAtlas.org and follow down to the donate button where you can make a tax-deductible donation to the Jerry and Judith Paul Native Pollinator Endowment. Every little bit helps. See you next episode.